going on, guys? It's the Coaster Battleman here, bringing you my rankings of all the B&M roller coasters I've ridden, and this is the number 29 through number 16 spots. I've ridden 31 B&Ms in total, with all the Batman the ride clones all being combined as one spot because it's a cloned coaster. Superman Ultimate Flight, I've only ridden one of the three. But if I rode multiple Supermans, I would also combine them into one spot. And yeah, let's get started with 29th place, which is the worst B&M I've ever ridden, and it's not even close. It's Apocalypse at Six Flags America. This ride is the original B&M. It used to be at Six Flags Great America as Iron Wolf, and it recently was redone into a floorless coaster, and it's called Firebird, and it's a lot better than what it used to be as Apocalypse. Apocalypse, it has a okay layout. I mean, for B&M standards, it was pretty bad, but for a coaster layout, it was okay, I guess. You had a couple inversions and turns. It was a fine layout, but the ride was extremely shaky and rough, and I got a ton of headbanging on these elements, and it was very brutal and not that enjoyable. 28 is another B&M stand, the only other stand-up coaster I've ridden besides Apocalypse, and that's Vortex at Carowinds. An awful B&M stand-up coaster. I mean, the first time I rode it, I thought it was okay. The drop and the vertical loop I thought were pretty fun, but then the rest of the ride was kind of eh. The second time, I hated this coaster, and I'm just not a fan of stand-up coasters. Both this ride and Apocalypse, both awful coasters, and hopefully Vortex gets converted into a floorless coaster very soon. 27 is Alpengeist, and this is a much, much better coaster than the previous two coasters on this list. But it is the weakest good B&M coaster I've ridden. And, I mean, the layout is pretty solid on this coaster. You have several inversions, and it's 195 feet tall as well, and it utilizes the terrain pretty well. It's a very fun coaster, but it's one of the roughest B&M inverts out there. Probably the bumpiest invert I've ridden, and one of the bumpier B&Ms. It's not quite the greatest coaster, but it's a solid ride. It's not a bad ride by any means. But overall, not really the strongest B&M in the world. 26 is X-Flight at Six Flags Great America. Solid layout, a very good grand finale going through two near-miss elements into a closing helix, and the inversions are pretty cool on this coaster. The problem is that this coaster has aged a bit poorly in recent years, and it has gotten shaky on some elements, and especially with these very tight vest restraints on X-Flight. It's not like Gatekeeper where you can push them out a little bit more and it's a bit looser. These are very tight vests, and they really get a good grip on your ribs, and it's not that good. But overall, this coaster is pretty solid, has solid theming, and even though it's the weakest B&M at Great America, I still really enjoy it. 25 is Valraven at Cedar Point, a very cool B&M dive coaster. It has 3 inversions and 2 really cool drops, but not quite the strongest dive coaster. It's a bit shakier than the other dive coasters I've ridden, and I'm not as big of a fan of the vest restraints as the over-the-shoulder restraints on these dive coasters as well. But overall, Valraven is very picturesque, and it has a nice color scheme, and the ride experience is pretty solid, despite the shorter duration and a little bit shakier than average smoothness. So, yeah, moving on to 24, we have Superman Ultimate Flight, and this coaster has one standout element that makes it stronger than all the B&Ms before it on this list, and that is the pretzel loop, which is absolutely insane, especially if you're in the back row. And the first drop is also a very solid drop, even though it's fairly shallow, but then the rest of the ride is just kind of meandering around, and it doesn't really do anything. But overall, Superman, pretty smooth ride, really enjoyable, and I really like it a lot. Not my favorite flying coaster, but not my least favorite flying coaster either. Number 23 is Batman the Ride, and this is an awesome B&M inverted coaster. It's compact, it's intense, the inversions are really good, and even though this is a clone, it is a really good clone. These are compact, smaller inverted coasters, and this is why so many parks buy this exact ride, because of the way it can fit into a ton of into like different areas of the park and all that. But overall, Batman the Ride, you can never go wrong with a B&M invert called Batman the Ride, or in Fiesta Texas's case, Goliath. This is a pretty decent B&M invert, and yeah, that's how I like it. 22 is Rougarou at Cedar Point. This is a very solid and very underrated B&M floorless coaster with some pretty cool inversions and turns throughout the ride. And overall, I really enjoy it. 21 is Kraken, and this is a very large-scale B&M floorless, but not my favorite floorless coaster in the world because it is one of the rougher B&Ms that I've ridden. It has a very strong layout and an awesome first drop, but unfortunately some of these elements like the Cobra roll and the corkscrews can have some pretty bad head banging at times, especially with these large B&M over-the-shoulder restraints. But still, this is a really cool coaster as it goes over the water, it goes through tunnels, and the layout is excellent on this coaster as well. 20th is SheiKra at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. No, Gardens Tampa. My bad. SheiKra and Griffon, both very similar rides, but SheiKra is the weaker of the two, honestly, because it's not quite as cool as Griffon. It doesn't have as strong of a layout, as it only has one Immelman and not two Immelmans. But both are very similar, but SheiKra is a little bit less smooth and has a shorter layout. But I still really enjoy it. 19th is Dominator at King's Dominion. This is a really cool B&M floorless coaster, my favorite floorless coaster. It has a very strong layout, and it is a bit smoother than Kraken. It kind of has a good mix between Rougarou and Kraken, where it has a really cool layout and a good amount of inversions. And it's a pretty long ride as well. 18th is Montu at Busch Gardens Tampa. This is a very solid B&M invert. It's pretty smooth. It has good inversions. And I don't really have anything negative to say about it. 17th is Griffon at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. This is a really cool B&M dive coaster. It has two Immelmans, a very awesome first drop, and 10 across seating. This is an excellent coaster at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, my second favorite at the park. And overall, it continues to give great rides. 16th is Banshee at Kings Island, and this is the best of number 29 through number 16 on my B&M's list. This is a great coaster, a top 10 B&M if you're in the front row. But the farther back you go on this coaster, the shakier and more noticeable the rattle is on this coaster. And that's with all the Kings Island B&Ms, but it's on this coaster it's the most apparent. But I really like this coaster. It has a great first drop, an excellent layout with plenty of inversions, and a very nice finish to the coaster with that rollover inversion and the final helix. This is an excellent coaster and a top 5 coaster at Kings Island. And that is all for this video, guys. Be sure to check out some of my previous videos, and be sure to check out part 2 of the B&M list and my top coasters at Cedar Point, which are both coming soon. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more videos.